My fellow mortal realms, I see in your eyes the same fear that would take the heart of me. A day may come where the courage of Sigmar fails, from where we forsake our oaths of loyalty and break faith with our allies. But it is not this day. Our hour of wolves of shattering shield when the age of chaos comes crashing down, but it is not our day. This day we fight. All right, this is, by the way, is a ChatGPT flip around of like was it Braveheart in Mel Gibson, but for Age of Sigmar. But by Sigmar, I swear that we will not be slaves to the force of chaos. We will not bow down to their twisted gods. We will fight for their freedom and for the future of our families and for the mortal realms. So let us take up our arms and stand tall as Stormcast Eternals, as the sons of Grimnir, as the Kurnoth Hunters and the Ironjaws, and the Free People and the cities of Sigmar. And let us fight today, one day together, for Sigmar, for order, for the mortal realms. Now, let's march forth and face our enemies with courage and determinations, for today we fight for our very survival.
And the Oscar goes too. Okay, I like this. I like this. All right. So next time I'll do it, and I want it to be the speech from Independence Day. Okay, we'll get ChatGPT. Is that what it's called?
So g'day and welcome to the finest hour, episode 2 of season 1. That introduction was sent to us by Vlad, a fan of the channel, and he was showing me a couple of examples of ChatGPT, the AI tool that people have probably heard a lot about. And he was showing me a couple of scripts and examples of like Age of Sigmar versions of X, Y, and Z. And I saw that Braveheart one, and I'm like, all right, let's intro it and let's see how badly I butcher things. And I think I did all right.
That was good. Respect it. Yeah, it's almost like public was. You know, it can be a little cringy, but if you just go into it and just like, it works.
I tell you what, though, I saw your face and I almost broke when it talked about the Kurnoth Hunters and the Ironjaws, and I'm like, what?
No, Ironjaws aren't part of that. But hey. ChatGPT tried, it's a 40K player.
Shout out to AI. How good is that? They're going to take our jobs one day. I'll be doing battle reports and like it'll be ChatGPT doing the work.
So Shu posted some AI models, and he had to let me know, these aren't real models. These just like some AI stuff. And I'm just like, and you see all the people, the profile pics and stuff. But I'm like, I don't want the government having my business like that. So I ain't going to submit nothing. But same thing when it comes to like ancestry. I don't want to know.
It's like, it reminds me of like when I see ChatGPT, I think of the Terminator. I'm like, we're just feeding the machine. Yeah. Eventually they're going to take over. And but this is the finest hour where Jack from Rerolling Ones and myself from AoS Coach, we come together once a month to talk a little bit more informally than we normally do. Jack obviously is a master of battle reports. I'm an okay talking head when it comes to Age of Sigmar. And today's episode is going to be about starting an army, and a lot of questions came up about whether it's starting your first army for the first time or whether it is going into your next one. A lot of people were kind of asking, and thank you to everyone who submitted their questions, like, how do we do it? Like, how do you know that you've made the right decision, and how do you, expand and make a choice? So that'll be our topic. But before we get to that, g'day, Jack. What is going on?
How are you? I'm doing well. This will probably be the last episode here because I got a cool new place, a great opportunity. But as far as how I've been doing, I went to a GT recently, and I have been hobbying more. And I was working on the new corn model, the Realm Gorger, or like the priest, the new one, right?
Realm Scourge Ritualist, I think it is.
Ritualist, yes. I've been working on the Ritualist. And it reminded me how much enjoyment you can get from painting, because it was like, for me it was like, I don't want to paint. I found the great wealth of just time saving that commission painting is, and you can fall into that trap. Well, I just get this commission, but like you can really be creative and like, this is coming together very well. And so I'm having a blast painting her. Almost finished there. And as far as like, the hobby Sparkle Party was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. There's a lot of faces I missed, and we have a great community up here in the Pacific Northwest.
So tell me, what is Sparkle Party and what did you bring and how'd you go?
Okay. So Sparkle Party is a grand tournament put on by Dimensional Cascade, which is a local competitive group up here, head up by Matt Beasley, Ricky, who is a beautiful painter. But Matt Beasley, he's on Team America. He's, you probably, if you keep track of ITC, you've probably seen his name up there. I've never actually beat Matt Beasley in the tournament play. He's really good, but I have beat him at his house. So I'll take that one win.
That counts.
It totally counts. It was just me and him there. But and so this is like, my goal this year was to get good, but get back to, 2021 Jack, when I was winning tournaments and coming second in GTs. I should have won that one. But this is like, and you have to put in the work though. I didn't want to be that guy sitting at a GT going over my battle tactics. Like, what can I do? What I can do? So I built my list knowing, and like, shout out to my boy Mason, I put together a roadmap. All right, okay, this is going to be my tactic for this one, knowing the missions and all that stuff. And so I, played my first round. So I took Settler's Game, which was like a mix of Lumineth, Cities of Sigmar. It's one of those things I figured out I was a Johnny, where it's one of those, I put all the things together and I want to present it to the world. And, so I ran a Valinor, the Stoneheart King, and Frostheart Phoenix, anointed on Frostheart. So you have a -1 to hit, -1 to wound, or running around.
You're annoying. You're already annoying. Let me just call that. That's so annoying. -1 to hit, -1 to wound. Like,
just those guys, those power pair going around. I had some crossbowmen, battle mage. I can bridge on a 3-up re-rolling with Master of Magic. It had some really cool techie pieces I enjoyed. And so I got to play a really cool game against Stark and his Stormcast. And I got to also, because I learned by playing, and I got to learn you need to respect protectors. Protectors are really good. And so I had a really good turn one where my purple sun was just like, oh, you're dead, and you're dead, and you're dead. One of those kind of turns. So I had a really good turn one, turn two. But then, of course, your opponent gets to go. Like, if I just got to go, I would have been great. But, but your opponent gets to go. And so I had a close game. Second game, Steven and his Iron Jaws, which is one of those things, like, a lot of it was in ignorance. Because I know Iron Jaws, Gorg Runners. You got to get the Gorg Runners. No, Brutes are really good too. And so a lot of times you lose, you learn. And I definitely learned those both first two games. Then played against Night Haunt, and it was one of those games where it's like, oh yeah, I'm good at this. Because I'm winning through, I need to do this and tactics. And it's not just like, okay, I killed all my enemies, now I'm sitting on the objectives. I really think, oh, I know how to play this game. I know how to react to his movements. And so that was the first day. Again, then I went out, had a lot of fun, and it was like, you know what? I like sleep as well, and so I didn't go to. I pulled the LVO.
Did you do an LVO? So for anyone who doesn't know this, before Jack tries to like convince and say what happened, so like LVO, which was obviously it started the January or late January. Jack went missing. So we had a great day of karaoke and like I had, day one and all that great stuff. And then Jack just disappeared for another day or two. And it turns out, partied a little bit hard, but he just completely phantomed from day two. And it seems like the cycle has been repeated where Jack does well or plays day one and then phantoms day two. So
it's I had a lot of fun, And it's one of those things I realized too, because locally we kind of stopped having RTTs. It was just DT or nothing, and so I hadn't been able to. You have to build up your stamina.
Yeah.
Because 5 games AOS, and it was one of those things. Like, I just looked at myself like, I don't want to play Warhammer tomorrow. It's like, and I'm a grown man, and I it's not all like I do what I want, because you do kind of mess up other people's stuff. It is a little selfish because you're like, all right, somebody dropped and now somebody has a buy, and it ended up working out both times. And so I want to definitely, with this move and stuff, I'll be going to more RTTs to build up that stamina to be like, okay, I have the mental and the physical like energy to go do 2 more games of Warhammer. And so yeah, but I didn't go to day 2. But I still had a lot of fun. So I
as
went,
long as you had fun and you talked to the TO. Look, I think there's a couple of things here that maybe is a future episode, but like there's plenty of times where you'll face an opponent, especially at like not a GT, like it could be a local game store. It could be a casual, like one day at your local store. RTT, by the way, is just like your one day competitive, like 3 games at a store is the traditional. It comes from a history of like the rogue trader tournaments, but actually it's not an Age of Sigmar language. But
we should come up with our own name.
There's something in what you said before about the fact that if you don't enjoy playing somebody and there's nothing on the line, it's like, you know what, just have the win. You know what? I'm not enjoying this game. We're not having fun. We don't have rapport. You may not want to be as confrontational. Like, you know what? You just want the win more than I do. Have it and, you know, walk away from the table. Not every game, please don't do that. But I think there's something in that where it's okay to walk away. It's okay if you're not having a good time to come day 2. But I think also, I think you build up your stamina if you push forward. So I'm not giving everyone an excuse, just a consideration.
Yeah, the next time, this was the last one. I'm gonna, stick it out.
What's the next tournament? And I want to see a proper commitment.
There are actually 2 RTTs in April, locally, and so I want to, because I really like, I'll tell you about future mindset. So I'm looking at the releases where they're showing, there's some new Cities of Sigmar stuff coming out, and so you're like, well, it looks like Free Guild's getting redone with the Dawnbreaking Crusade. And a lot of my Settlers game list has a lot of Free Guild in it. And so it's just like, man, do I want to keep using it? Even though, because it's going to, I'm like Warhammer bougie. If there's new models, I don't want to use the old ones. And so I'm like, I have all these crossbowmen. I'm like, how do I finish up the last touches on them? Because I do want my Settlers game army it's really cool concept. I got a custom like Phoenix and stuff. But the U.S. Open is coming up here in July. And so I'm like, I want that army for that thing because it just looks cool. And then we can send those models off to, the great plastic bin in the sky, whatever, and then get the new stuff. And so
no, you'll be rebasing them onto squares for the old world.
There we go. Hey, there we go. Hey. That's all I like you, Coach. Think positive. But yeah, I'm going to go to one of those RTTs and play all 3 games, and have my roadmap. And yeah, I'm excited. What about you, sir? How have you been?
I have had an AoS holiday. I have not played a single game. I have not painted a model, and I've done a little bit of building. So like off the record, like the amount of battle tomes that have come out, I think I've worked out that by the time the end of this month, I think I would have done 7 battle tome previews in 3 months. Which is ridiculous. Like it's battle tome every week or every 2 weeks. So that's really taken up a lot of my hobby time, but I have done a little bit of my army just on display board. I've done some converting. I've been building some of my Slaves to Darkness Slanesh army. I've been working on my Demon Prince, a nod to the old Demon Prince Azazel. And I've also been building, and it's not quite ready just yet. I've still got a whole bunch of conversion on. There's another hero from the old world. It was a snake lady, basically. It's called T'Challa. And she will be like the leader for the foot hero, like it was the exalted hero on foot. So that I'm going to have basically a nod to the old world in each of my units. So I've got the boob snake. I don't know if you remember the old boob snake. Google it. It's a real thing. It's not going to bring up some hentai. I'm not shaming you if you like that. But it like there's like this model where there's like a really cool snake with a chaos lord. That'll be like working with my who
kind of has like the Spartan helmet on it and stuff.
It's a really cool model. Really cool model. I got my hands on that. Obviously, Zazel, the Demon Prince, and just been converting and kit bashing. And I think once the new battle tomes for Death come out, I will be I'll be able to do some hobby again. Like I'm looking at my pile and I'm going, but what have I done? I have done everything under the sun. I went to a metal festival called Knotfest, so I got to see like a Monomath and Slipknot, and there's so many cool bands, like so many awesome bands like Megadeth and I think Parkway Drive and Trivium, and I got to go to a Weird Al concert. I love Weird Al, and I got to meet Weird
That's
Al,
awesome.
which was incredible, and also went to like a pro wrestling show and got to meet a whole bunch of international pro wrestlers like Matt Cardona and things like that. So that was basically a lot of cool things, but there's no AoS.
That's
AoS.
awesome. Because you do need a break at times. It's like you kind of get just stuck in something. You're like, oh, there's other interests I have outside of this.
It's been a real weird one for me. I don't know what it's like for you, Jack, but I come off LVO, and that was the old General's Handbook. I kind of, took a little bit of a break in February. Battle Tomes were coming out. I've got a GT and a couple of RTTs coming up pretty soon, but I feel like by the time I'm getting into my swing this edition, which is like early April, we're kind of at the halfway mark.
Yeah,
like we've got another General's Handbook coming in June, so it's almost like I can almost write this half season off.
Yeah, that's what I did the season before this one, where it was just like and trying to get caught up on this one, and you realize, we talked about it last episode. It's like, is it too fast? Because you like when they do the Cities of Sigmar preview, they got the little GHB right there with it. It's like, oh yeah, that is just. It's like it's very fast, and then you realize because I'm like 10th edition 40K is coming out. I'm like, wait, 9th edition just came out. I played one game in that. But I'm not a 4K player, but it's just like, oh, this is in like we have next edition AoS next year. It's like, oh, yeah, this is just the new normal kind of thing you got to get used to.
I'm hoping that the next General's Handbook is a year again. I think generally what I'm hearing is a lot of people were unhappy, and I think the rate was too fast. The other thing as well is, again, I feel it. Like I've done 7 Battletome previews this year. Like back end of last year, there was at least another 6 when you count them all up. The rate of Battletomes coming out has been ridiculous, but it almost feels like they needed to get it out so that come June they can focus on 40K. And really, all we have left, really, depending on when Seraphon comes out, and let's put Seraphon to the side for a minute. We know that's coming, just don't know when. We've also got Flesh Eater Courts, Cities of Sigmar. That's it. Yeah. Other than like revisiting Stormcast, revisiting any other army, that's it.
Something new. Yeah, that's it. And then you're like, hopefully this next edition, like if we could use, these books for a while, but we'll see what they're trying to make money, trying to sell stuff, and it's like a living game, which is interesting from like the Warhammer I grew up on to now. It's like, oh, it's a living, breathing. The internet just causes everything to go faster. Like, oh, we messed up here, change that rule real quick. And it's like you appreciate it, but I think we can take it for granted as well.
Back in the day, like that broken battle tome or army book would last you years. Like Wood Elves, I remember them being busted in 8th edition. I think Dark Elves in 6 were a bit busted, but the rate of change was so slow that you lived with it. And that's where comping kind of came in. But it's interesting. Like I think when we move into the next General's Handbook, if most of the battle tomes are done, I feel like some campaign books are going to come, right? Like, Arcs of Omen, we had the Broken Realms. I wonder if that's how we get some expansion and some narrative kind of progressing.
A little malign portents. What is malign portents? It was so mysterious.
I loved that, by the way. Malign portents was such a cool campaign.
Countdown, and all of a sudden, hey, there's some malign portents.
Yeah, those 4 little heroes of the portents. You had the little the Excruciator. You had the Dark Oath Queen. You had the Gloomspike Gitz Fungoid. That was great. It was such a cool time. Do you want to talk about the topic? Do you want to get into like we're talking already? Like I'm excited about this one because it is something that people ask. We probably all get asked this, right? And whether you are somebody who is brand new for the first time, maybe you're watching this and you have not picked up your first Age of Sigmar army. Hello, welcome. Maybe you're starting and you don't quite know where to go and what to do, or maybe you've got an army you love, but you're feeling the itch and you're like, I want to start another army. So I guess the topic of today and what we're going to spend the main segment on is how do we start an army? And Jack, I'm sure you would agree with me. What we say is not the golden truth. It's just our
100%.
two opinions.
Yeah.
And if you don't agree with the way we do things, or if your circumstances are different, like that's cool. It's just how we approach the process of armies. So
yeah, it's like, yeah, it's one of those things trying to get to the thing. This is like, and also like we'll point out, like my hobby journey is not going to reflect most people, being that like, getting into it, the time I got into it, and also being a content creator, like we're able to, it's like, it's not the normal, because you're able to get access to stuff like, through GW, or like through, one thing I learned doing this is like, if somebody who digs what you do, enjoys all your stuff, like wants to support, I learned to just say, well, thank you. I will appreciate the support. And so like I've gotten like units and models through that, and I always want to give people shout outs and much love. Like, and it's always nice to get those messages like, oh, that's my unit from the thing. Yes, like, yeah, I wish I could have rolled better, but yeah, that is the model you painted on the unit you did. And like, much love to everybody who's like supported the channel throughout the years.
But that isn't unique to you, right? Like I'm going to bring you back a little, because while you do battle reports and people want to contribute to you, that's not quite unique, because I see so many people, whether they start an army and they're like, look, this is not for me, I just want to pass it on.
Yeah.
I see people who exit the hobby, or maybe they tried our game, they want to go to something at a smaller scale like Marvel or whatever. I see people give them away and do them dirt cheap as well. So sometimes, and like I haven't been privileged for anyone to give me an army or give me units like that, while waiting for the day, probably because it's expensive in Australia. But those things you can't rely on, and it's when you see it, you take it. But talk to me at Age of Sigmar. Let's start the topic. And what was your first Age of Sigmar army? And I'm saying Age of Sigmar because I started in fantasy battles, and I'm not going to go down that road because the world of fantasy battles and how we did things is very different. So let's talk Age of Sigmar. And what was it? What was your first army?
First army was like Stormcast. It came in the box. Like, so my getting back into the hobby, like, we mentioned we are old school 90s, fantasy players, and like I took a almost 15-year break. And so getting back into it, like, I was just hanging out with my brother. Where, he was in his early 40s. I was in my mid 30s. We're like, we should play Warhammer again. And then I'm like, all right, what is Age of Sigmar? What did you guys do while we were gone? There's that couch is on fire. What happened to this place? It's a mess. But like being like, I didn't have that negative people that a lot of people initially carried over. They took something from me and gave me this. I was like, what happened? I was just more curious. And so Stormcast came in the box. And so that's what I started with. And it wasn't even supposed to be like, it was a placeholder army until I got to play what I wanted to play, which was like Slanesh, because I still had some stuff from back in the day, some Juan Diaz and all this stuff. And so, and just Stormcast was the first one.
Which box? Because Stormcast's been in 3 boxes now.
Oh, the first, the Corn Stormcast won the initial Age of Sigmar box. And so I got into the hobby. Like, I remember walking around and like KO had just like a White Dwarf with KO just had KO. And so it was the first GHB. And that's when I got into the hobby.
Nice. My first Age of Sigmar army. So I was the person that was you took something from me, and I'd rebased my empire to be free people, and then eventually Cities of Sigmar. But my first proper Age of Sigmar army was Gits. It was Glimpse by Gits. Glimpse by Gits. I played free people for ages. Did quite successfully. Really enjoyed it. And oh no, sorry, I lied. No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. It was not Gits. It was technically Flesh Eater Courts. So here's how our journeys can be very different. So I went over to the UK at the end of 2017, and I played at Blood and Glory, which was a UK tournament at the time. It was about 150 people. Took my free people over, got to play on the GW Battle Report stream, amazing experience. And at the cost of GW product in the UK was literally half price to Australia. So at Warhammer World, I bought 4 Start Collecting boxes. I bought 4 Start Collecting boxes of Flesh Eater Courts. And my plane ride over to the UK, I read the entire battle tome of Flesh Eater Courts, and I was hooked on the Grand Delusion. I was hooked on the lore, and I was so excited to, when I got home, take those 4 start collecting boxes and build something and play Flesh Eater Courts, which is what I did. I built my ghouls, a little bit frustrated at the time because I wanted to play. There was a battalion called the Royal Menagerie, which is essentially now what's called Grizzlegore. It was about taking Terrorgeist and zombie dragons, and it was meant to be like a monster army, but they weren't battle line at the time. So I had to put in my army these ghouls. So I found it really restrictive at the time. And then all of a sudden, Legions of Nagash got launched. And I'm like, wait a second. These boxes come dual kits. Zombie dragons, Terrorgeist are both in Legions of Nagash, which is now what you know as Soul Black Grave Lords. The mount, you can build a Vampire Lord on there as well. And then I saw it, and I'm like, Flesh Eater Court's play style wasn't for me. Like, it wasn't working for me.
And this is the first book, right?
This is the original Flesh Eater Courts. Because of the battle line restriction, I'm like, I can't do what I want to do. And then I saw like the flashiness of like having a horde of Skellies running Manfred and Isabel. I'm sorry, and Neferata. So I quickly pivoted from my from that to Soul Black Gravelords, or formerly the Legions of Nagash.
Did you have the Terrorgeist built yet, or they were still in the box before you decided to pivot?
I built them all, but they were all in the processes of being painted, but I'd never glued the mount. So I magnetized the mounts just because for ease of transport, especially with the GW cases. But so switching actually was quite easy because the flayers are Vargeists. So like it's actually a really good dual box that is no longer around, but it made it very easy to switch to Legions of Nagash.
That's actually like a kit that's a triple. You got the Crypt Flayers, the Vargeists, and the Crypt Horrors. And that they could have made a fourth. They could have made like a Vargeist sort of horror mashup, and but they didn't.
I think the other thing that kind of annoyed me about Flesh Eater Courts, Games Workshop fixed this, is with the Flesh Eater Courts box, and it's still to this day, if you want like a courtier, whether you want a ghoul courtier, you want one of the little heroes, you've got to break up a kit. So like you could buy a box of like 3 flayers and have like a courtier, like 2 different versions of a courtier. And I've got this one idiot I can't do anything with. It was kind of annoying.
Yeah.
So
and it's like that's why I like, going forward, who knows what they're going to do with Flesh Eater Courts later, but like I would love a unique hero for each, where it's just like, well, this is just a champion on a bigger base for the ghoul one, and it's just like it's almost, I don't say lazy, but they working with what they have, but you'd want a more unique sort of thing.
My prayer would be to build an Underworlds warband. Just do an Underworlds warband, because a lot of people buy those Underworlds as like a replacement for champions and things like that. Have a Varga, have a Flayer courtier, have a horror courtier, have a ghoul courtier.
Yeah, that's perfect. Hey.
Like that's a way to expand the range, right? Like boom, boom, hire me, GW. So why did you choose? So I just shared my story on how I got into Flesh Eater Courts. Cost was great for me, although that could happen at any time. I could have bought any start collecting box. But the lore really for that Flesh Eater Courts, and even the Legions of Nagash, when I ported over, the lore caught me a lot. But what got you into Stormcast? I know you said it was a placeholder. Was it just that?
I know what had me fall in love with it, I guess, because it was just meant to be a placeholder one. Because like for my Warhammer journey, my older brother was there, like lockstep. Like almost, I just followed him, and I just kind of took off with it and became a lot better. And so it was just, I remember the first time I played, he had his Seraphon now, because he still had his old Lizardman, and then now he had a Seraphon, and and I was still, I hadn't played for 15 years, so I still had my teenage, early 20 tactics, which is boom, go forward. And we played, and he had gone through his book, he learned all his rules and everything, and he kicked the snot out of me. And I was like, oh my, did I just waste? I hate it. I didn't have fun at all. I was like, did I just waste a bunch of money? And I'm like, because at the time up here, especially in our area, like Pfeifer Press is a local company. And so you're going to local game shops and everybody's playing War Machines and Horde. And so I talked to just an employee at a local game store, and I was like, did I waste my money? Is nobody playing Age of Sigmar? And he was like, yeah. And so I was like, man, but I'm like, I have this like loyalty to this game I played as a child. And so I'm still sticking it out. And of course I discovered the internet, but going on the internet, that's how I found 2+ Tough, found out he was local, became friends with him. And that's how I started this journey. But going back to Stormcast, I realized, all right, I'm going to learn how to play. And I discovered like, okay, how can I beat my brother? That's all I cared about. I don't want to win tournaments and make battle reports. I want to beat my brother. And so I'm like, okay, these long strikes look pretty good. Well, I can just take a bunch of them. And so I remember I took a photo. I'll send you the photo. I took a photo like, if you've seen the movie Memento, where he takes the photo and points at his chest because this is where he's going to put I got revenge. But I took a photo the first time I beat my brother. I'm 36. And I'm taking a photo and he's being grumpy in the back because I remember how it happened. I'll go through this real quick. So we were just playing custom stuff. We built our own terrain and he connected all these terrain pieces together. And I asked him, I was like, is this all one piece of terrain? And he was like, yeah. And so I had my Heralder blow the trumpet and it nuked his whole army. And then he quit. And I was like, that counts as a win. I won. And so that's why I play this game, for memories. Like me and my brother have that shared experience. And so, and then I kind of fell in love with Stormcast, like started reading the lore. Because initially I thought, wait, are these empty suits? Are there people? Oh, okay, there are people inside. Okay. And then you get to learning more. And then like I took them to, I built a list. I took them to my first tournament and I won. I won the tournament. And it was like, and then, winning is it's a good little aphrodisiac, so like, hey, this is, I fell in love with Stormcast, but and I've expanded from there.
No, that's so cool. That is so. There is nothing like brotherly motivation to beat your brother. Your brother's older, I assume.
Yeah,
or younger.
Older. Like I don't even like playing him. It's not fun. It is like there's no. That's last phase. You can't take that back. No, there's not. It's like that.
That's so fun. It reminds me of like back in the day when when my brother, because I've got a whole bunch of brothers as well. And I've got one particular brother, David, who is a massive wrestling fan as well. We got to go to like a wrestling show from WWE as well back in the Super Show. And our whole childhood, we would play all of the wrestling games together. He was Triple H, I was The Rock. Every after school, we'd always play like the N64, or we played, on PlayStation. It was always just like wrestling. And I reckon what you just said was exactly what he would say. Like, I just want to beat my brother. I just want to smash him. Being a little bit older than he was, but there's nothing like a motivation intrinsically that I want to beat the local person. I want to beat my brother. I want to be it's exciting, and it's a little, don't let it like become toxic.
Yeah.
Obviously
it's
you
friendly
haven't,
rivalry. It's like, it's not, we're not enemies. You say, I can't lose to you. You can't lose to me. And let's have fun. But, we're not cheating or anything, but I have tuned my list specifically to beat yours. I can't beat anybody else, but I can beat you.
And that's all that matters, right?
Yeah.
So you didn't know much about Stormcast going in. You obviously were new to the hobby. I knew mostly lore. At the time, I'd seen some people playing with Ghoul Patrol, which was a battalion that let you deep strike 3 units from the board edge of ghouls, and that was always a lot of fun. But when I went into Flesh Eater Courts, I didn't really have a lot of things in mind. I loved the lore. I had a concept in my head. But it wasn't really a popular faction, and it still really isn't a popular faction, the old Flesh Eater Courts. So it's not like I picked this up because it was like the strongest win rate in the game and there was some busted combination. So, and I imagine your journey wasn't the same. You found something you liked. You didn't even know that there were people in the suit. It was just, you went in blind with a couple of things.
I was just still in the thing, like what happened to the game. And so that's when I discovered like Vince, and just like going online, trying to figure out, all right, what happened? Okay, so Chaos won. All right, and there's, this is like a hard reboot. Okay, So wait, are the heroes coming back? Or the heroes are in the suit? They're reborn. So one of these guys could be Felix. Okay, and it's just like all these things trying to. It was more for curiosity rather than like It was nice not having that chip on the shoulder that a lot of people seem to have early in the hobby. And so yeah, and like that was that. So that's how I got that in the Stormcast, and definitely it was that familiar, growing to love it, because it was definitely Slanesh is my army, but this is what I have now, because it had its own book kind of thing.
So why didn't you start Slanesh?
Cause I remember those rumors like, oh, they're going to get rid of Slanesh. Because, at the time Slanesh was imprisoned, and because they're going for a G rating, so they can't really have this god of sex and, all these things. So they're going to get rid of that. These are all like, if you're getting into the hobby now, there was the wild, wild west back then. And you're just like, well, it has to be true. People are saying on the internet. And so I was like, okay, maybe not.
Well, think about it, right? At the time, Slanesh was imprisoned. So, okay, that was an indication that the internet took that Slanesh was being removed. Slanesh lost the place in the pantheon to the Great Horned Rat. So that was now a Chaos God. And there was no battle tome. They were the last of the Chaos Gods to get their battle tome. So I think a lot of people, you're right, were like, oh, they're getting rid of sex. They're going PG, beer and pretzels. Slanesh is going. So I can imagine the trepidation. And you hear this all the time. You hear people making tinfoil predictions that stop people. To be honest, I'm probably doing it as well, because I'm like, oh, I don't know what Cities of Sigmar is going to do. Oh, I'll just pause on that.
Yep, same thing. I'm like, I'm hearing rumors, Free Guild, vampirates, Chaos Dwarves. There are always going to be, rumors and stuff like that. And so it's like, I think a big thing is like enjoying it now. It's like are you enjoying it? Are you having fun? And then tuning down the chatter and having like reliable sources as well.
At the heart of it, we don't want to make a bad decision, which is actually probably what this video is about. It's about, I don't want to buy. No. But like for you went to the store and you heard rumors, whether they were true or not true, that Slanesh would be removed from the range. And you were like, maybe I shouldn't spend my hobby dollars right now. And I'll wait to see what happens with Slanesh. And lo and behold, Slanesh is still here 7 years later. But I can appreciate, and this is the challenge, right? When you look on internet lists and you see someone running the most effective unit or something that people are talking about, or they think it's bad, you don't want to make that bad decision either, right? Like you don't want to be wasting a model or wasting your dollars and building and painting. So nice segue back to the topic, but we're still on the topic.
Oh yeah. Oh. Yeah, you don't want to be a fool, but everybody plays the fool sometimes. Sometimes you try your best. But anybody want to buy some Free Guild crossbow, man? They're paying like Seahawks. So
But I think it comes back to Jack, like, why am I starting this hobby? If I'm trying to win a tournament, obviously I want to build a really good list. But one thing I always tell people is if you're going to build a tournament winning list and you're coming from really zero, how quickly can you build, paint, and practice this army to go and win that tournament? Because we mentioned right at the top of the show, the speed of the game right now and the amount of change that's coming. By the time you get this amazing model on the table in this army, it might have been FAQ'd, the points have changed, so that list no longer is effective, or the fact that the meta has evolved and now what used to be good is no longer good. So
you got things like Battle Scroll changing stuff up. Like, what's good? Please unnerf Stormcast. We don't need the nerf still. To unnerf it, remove all that stuff. We need help. But it was like, I think you mentioned on something like asking yourself, which is like a big thing, and I think it's one of the like questions. Like, you have to ask yourself, what am I trying to get out of this? Like, am I a competitive guy? Am I a casual guy? Who do I play mostly? Because if you're hyper competitive and your play group is not, it's like you have to realize, okay, I need to be able to take my foot off the gas a little, because I can't, like, I've made this mistake when I first got in the hobby. Like, I've had people quit because I didn't know this was too powerful. And they're just trying to, this Moth Crush is cool. And I'm like, I tuned this list to kill my brother, and this is what I have. So I'm going to kill it before it gets to go. And they're just like, I don't like this game. I'm like, okay, I shouldn't have done that, because that's this person's impression of the game. is my cool looking Maw Crusher that I spent month painting got to get shot off by a bunch of long strikes, and there was nothing I could do. And it's like, oh yeah, there's taking your foot off the gas is a skill as well.
Yeah, especially when you're going to your local store or the pickup game or someone who's newish. So it's a good shout. So when you started your Stormcast and I started my Flesh Eater Courts, did you buy everything in one go? Like, did you go from 0 to 2,000 points immediately? Or is this something that you built a couple of units? Like you mentioned the original starter box, but how did you build up to a force?
Like it's one of those things. This is not as applicable as it was then. Like the golden age of everybody hating this was secondary markets, and it was, you could clean up because people, like, it was there was a community where if you were a Sigmar fan, it was us against the world. And we have lost that some a little bit. The more popular the game is getting, because it's going to happen. But it was like you could clean up on eBay on these things because people tried the game, didn't like it. Like similar to me, my first game I didn't enjoy, but I had to beat my brother still. But you could get and I still have some of those older Stormcast stuff because I don't need 60 Liberators, but I got them because you could just get buy multiples of box set for really, really just pennies on dirt cheap. And so that is not as much anymore. But if cash is an issue, secondary markets are there. Like luckily I had a local store, which I ain't gonna say the name because I don't know if it's legal or not, but they just sell GW stuff 20% off. Like I don't know, they just do it. And so it's like, I would go there, like, oh yeah. And so, how much is this Start Collecting box? Is this? Well, it's 20% less than that. And so you can, if you search for deals, you can find them.
In saying all of that, like when we started, and you're right, like there was this time when we moved from fantasy battles to Sigma, people were not happy with the game, or some people weren't happy with the game, and they were happy just to get rid of them. And you're right, I got some good deals as well. But it's still true to this day. I recently picked up like 2 or 3 copies of Dominion, people who had split out the Stormcast Dominion, because I just wanted Indrasa's wings. So I'm using Indrasa's wings on my Prime. I've used Indrasa's wings on Azazel, and I wanted some more Indrasa wings for other projects because they're just beautiful angelic wings. And I picked them up with some Vindictors and some Annihilators, and I bought them at very cheap prices. I bought one off eBay, and I actually made an offer to the person. So instead of actually bidding on it, I just said, hey, I'll give you $60 for it. I've seen them on Facebook Marketplace, and while Stormcast is really cheap, Cruel Boys is even cheaper because often these dual boxes where you get like 2 forces fighting each other, one is normally more popular than the other.
Yeah.
And for those people who buy multiple boxes and split them, or Jack, you buy it for yourself because you really want the Stormcast side, but you got this Cruel Boys army sitting there, you're like, well, I could give it away. And some people do give them away.
Yeah.
Some people just sell them cheaply so they can go buy some extra hobby. So the deals are still there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How did I do mine? So I talked about the Start Collecting boxes, and in my situation, it worked really well because the Start Collecting Flesh Eater Courts was probably the 2 best Start Collecting boxes, along with Beast Claw Raiders. At the time, they were like the golden boxes. But most of the time, those Start Collecting, or what we now known as Varangard boxes, they are good, but you might not want to buy multiple of them depending on the force. So for me, it kind of ticked my battle line, I ticked my monsters and my heroes, and then I could just build it out a little. Do you reckon? So Hooves asked a question from the community was, can you have too many armies? I'm asking for a friend from Hooves.
From Hooves. Just like any sort of thing, especially like analyzing yourself. Like I have an addictive personality, obviously. And so if it is causing you trouble in your life, you can't have too much. If you're like, you can't, you miss a child support payment because you got some Warhammer stuff, that'll happen one time. There's like these, if it's a problem, it can be. So it can be, but like moderation is like, life. But that being said, like there's a time like when I moved into this place and I kind of had all my Warhammer stuff sitting in a corner, and I'm like, oh man, I have a problem. And they're like, oh, I have a YouTube channel, I have an excuse, just justifying it, like, oh, the channel armies and stuff. It's like, wow, that's a lot of stuff there. And so, but yeah, it can be, if just like, but so can, anything if it taken to the extreme. So moderation, my friends.
Yeah, moderation. And like, I think for me, when I look at my armies, I'm like, how often do I play these armies? And sometimes I've had like, for example, I had built a Seraphon army, Broken Realms, which was that narrative story that we talked about from a few years ago. There was some really cool like boxes. I don't know if you remember those boxes, but it was like 2 Stegodons and a Bastillodon, or you could make an Engine of the Gods. And I bought like 3 of them. It was incredible value because I just wanted to run monster trucks around the table casually. Then Thunder Lizard became really powerful, and I actually never played with them. Like, I think I played with them once. So like, it had been like 12 months where I'm like, look, I haven't played with them. I haven't really painted them. I'm just going to sell them for something that I'm more excited for. So I think it depends on like what you value. If you are a collector and you just want to casually paint, just do as much as you want.
I've recently just sold the Gitz army because I'm like, I got it for this, and I was just like, it was the Gitz version where it was just stabbers, right? I played it a couple times. I was like, I don't enjoy this. I don't enjoy this horde thing. Even with the new book coming out, I was like, I don't want to play that. And it's okay to sell it. Somebody is going to get enjoyment out of this.
Ironically, that's my favorite build of the Gits. I love my wall of stabbers. Just move forward. But hey, it just shows you like what somebody likes, other people don't like. So there is no one single way to do this game.
It's like so like death. The whole Grand Alliance death does nothing for me. I'm glad they exist. Like I'm happy that I look. Oh, that's a cool looking model. But it's just like, I don't like, it doesn't speak to me at all, but I'm glad it's there. Where some people, that is their jam. That's all they want to have. Blood Knights and like, it's like, I'm glad that's a thing. But it's like, so like the whole, I think I heard Vince say it the first time, like yucking somebody's yum. Like, that's dope that exists, and realizing that's not for me, but I'm glad it's not a thing. I'm glad it's a thing.
It's how I feel about KO. Like, KO, I'm not a fan of. I never will play KO, but that aesthetic and that like steampunkiness is there for other people, and that's okay. Not everyone. And like, I got to remind myself every time we do like those GW previews, this isn't always for me. Like, Lumineth's not for me, and that's okay. That's okay. Not every army has to be for me.
And you'll see a lot of people like, they'll take it personally. Like, this coming out means my stuff didn't come out. It's like trying to get past that. Like, hey, like, celebrate everybody. Like, when I play, I celebrate my opponent's successes. Like, oh my God, 2 6s, high fives, and all that stuff. Because I'm like, the game is the medium that I'm meeting people and having fun. It could be anything, but like, I choose, like, this is a game from my childhood that I'm like really into, really enjoying, and like, I love meeting my opponent and sharing those experiences with. Unless it's
No, the community is and the collaborative experience is the driving force that keeps us around, because we could play this on the computer, we could do so many different things, but it's the and that's what brings me to tournaments all the time. It's the collaborative, in-game, humanistic appeal of events.
Yeah, it brings me to the first day of the tournament.
Oh, so good. I've got like a laundry list of questions, by the way, so we might actually have to be a little bit rapid fire. No, not rapid fire, but I will be here forever. Like, we said the finest hour, and we're like 50 minutes at this point. So, like, which is obviously great. Maybe it's the finest hours, or
there we go.
I don't know if I ever told you this, but someone told me recently, like, the finest hour command or the heroic action, they call it their birthday, and I'm like, I love that. So, because you only get once, right? So, like, everyone has their birthday. So I'm like, yep.
It's Neferata's birthday. Yeah, it's Neferata's birthday this turn. That's really good.
So when you bought your second army, did you look for the same kind of thing that Stormcast offered? Like, were you looking for the same, I don't know, paint scheme, play style, rules, or were you looking for something different, or like what went from going from a Stormcast player to whatever was next from there?
Corn came in the box. Well, like, so I can tell you, like, my brother says this isn't true, but this is true. When I figured out how to beat him, I was beating him soundly. And then it's like, oh, this isn't, I need to take my foot off the gas. And so I was like, well, it comes with corn too. So I started playing corn just so, it wasn't as the one-sided games we were having. And so, okay, now trying to figure out how to beat him with corn was another thing. Because he was a Seraphon loyalist. He's still stuck with it, right? And so I'm trying, okay, I beat you with this one. Now I'm going to try to beat you with corn. And then, once I get the corn, and then after that, it started snowballing, because that's when I met like Doug and Shu, and we started the channel where it's just like, oh, now we're just, I have my hobby story, and my hobby journey is like, and I realized it was a privilege, because some of these questions that you ask, like, well, what do you do for your second army? And I'm like on my ninth, it's kind of thing where it's like there can be, I think one of the questions, like when you're bored, and like, I just happen to have that rotation where I can just play something else. And not everybody has that. Right. And so, like, going with corn, like, again, it came in the box, and trying to, it's never been a, what are the rules? I don't care what the rules are, right? It's like, it's not even like I know what I don't like. So it's like, I've tried out Gits, didn't like that. Tried out, like, I'm sure I'd like Trogs, but, tried out corn, like that. Didn't think I would, because I'm a Slanesh guy, remember? And so, and like, that being said, when Slanesh book did come out, and I've been waiting for it, I didn't like that. Because, like, I like to overachieve. Now, for me personally, I like to overachieve with a non-top tier army. And if you remember when Slanesh first came out, it was like a lot of like, oh, this is too good. And I happened to play their counter with Shootcast. And so I was racking up some tournament wins against Slanesh.
Yeah. So much to unpack there. But it's maybe like one thing I want to call out and just double down on is, you mentioned having a rotation of armies, and if people are in a position to have multiple armies, I would recommend having like three or more. Not like every army in the game, but I think one of the things that, I really appreciated. So I really enjoy Gits. I played Gits from day one when they came out in 2019, I think they were, and I love them to death. But they did not have a third edition battle tome for 18 months. 18 months. No grand strategies. They were at the bottom of the tiers for a long time. And it was refreshing to be able to either go in with my Gits and still play with them and do well, or know that they aren't quite as strong as they should be. Or I could go, you know what? Gits aren't doing well at the moment. I'll play with my Stormcast. I'll play with my daughters. I'll play with something else. And then when the battle tome becomes good again, I've had a little bit of a break, and I can play with them with their new book. So it helps me regulate my emotions when my army isn't doing well, or, there's FAQs and nerfs, but I've still got other tools that I can play with. And it can be very helpful, especially with the meta, and some of the armies don't have deep rosters. So it's like right now, like we're playing in the meta that has Galatian champions. Well, Suns have no Galatian champions. Like, I could either get really frustrated and upset that Suns doesn't have a champion, or I could either accept the limitation or go play one that has lots of champions. And I've got plenty of armies that do.
Yeah, and there's like, realizing like, sometimes it's just affordable. I can only afford one or two armies, and so, or just one army, and trying to like, okay, well, maybe something that might help me is not playing a 2,000 point game, playing like just going to Warcry, or to switch up just the gaming aspect, like 1,000 points and something like that. And it's nice where there's these books coming out. There's multiple ways to play competitive, which is really nice. It used to be like, all right, this is the build, this is whatever. I think they've really like balance sub factions more, where like there's no clear cut winner all the time.
And like, by the way, like, there is nothing wrong with only owning one army. I'm not saying that you have to go by three, because if I have one Stormcast army or one, I don't know, Slaves to Darkness army, that has like 80 units in it. So like, you can go deep in one faction, but then there are some like KO or Iron Jaws that are very, very slim. So no two factions are the same. So I'd say keep that in mind.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's go through some other listener questions, because there's a whole bunch of really good ones that I think people will appreciate. Because I think we can talk about our journeys and our recommendations, but we've got guiding questions. So Richard Baker saying, do you guys think with the rules of, do you think of rules of cool at any time or every time, or are you just in this ever hungry meta chasing environment?
Like it's more, it's not all or one. I would lean more towards rule of cool. I've never been what's good, take that. I remember I bought an army once it was like a bunch of just like Empire horses or pistoliers and stuff. And that was like, oh, this is not what fulfills me. I like to build my own thing. And so, it's not like I don't understand, like, okay, here's the net list, whatever. If that's how you play, that's perfectly fine. Don't let anybody shame you and say, hey, net listing's bad. But for me, I kind of like, does the model look cool? Then the rules can be whatever. But look, it also depends on like asking yourself, is this for tournament play, for casual play? Am I going to be curating an experience with a buddy of mine? Like, okay, it's like a lot of it is like realizing your player and your goal in the hobby.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Like, am I just building a casual army to play with my friends? I could be a part of my local store doing like a Tale of Four Warlords or a slow grow campaign.
Mm-hmm.
Or am I building this army to go play at Adepticon, at LVO, at some major tournament? And my goal is to do well. And if my goal is to do well, then the meta needs to be considered. Never have I once seen a list on the internet and said, I'm going to go buy that 2,000 points. But it might influence me. It might go, ooh, I'm going to a tournament in a couple of months' time, and I see Magic is really strong at the moment with Tzeentch, Lumineth, and Seraphon. Whatever army I build, I need to consider some magical powers or some magical unbinding abilities, because otherwise I may actually build up an army and then get really disappointed with it and lose all motivation and hope if I get my butt kicked at that tournament and like I never go back to it. So for me, I think they're not mutually exclusive. But as tournament player, I do consider the tournament, but I wouldn't call me a meta chaser. Anything else you'd add to that, Jack?
No. That's agreed.
Travis Giffen saying, does a conversion project ever kick off a whole army?
Yeah, it has. Like I've seen some really just inspirational. It's just the kernel of idea. It like expanded into 2,000 points can be beautiful. Like where you're talking about you're bringing back the old world into your Slaanesh. It's just that conversion thing. And like I think you have to like, was it Daughters of Cain?
I was going to tell you my Daughters of Cain was
beautiful. Yep. And so yes, it has. And like when you find inspiration in this game, write it out. When you be with painting, like my Hurricanum, it kind of like bringing the old world. It has like, and I was like, that is something I thought of. I'm like, one day I'm going to get good enough at painting, at like kit bashing to make this. It was the idea germinated in my head, and seeing that on the battlefield, because I thought about it when I first got in. It's being dragged by a Dracoth, because it was for my Stormcast army, and I was like, well, it was before Stormcast had wizards. And I was like, what is a Stormcast looking wizard? Balthazar Gelt. And so allied him in, and I'm really proud of that model, because it was just something I created.
I always lean in with conversions. My Cities of Sigmar, for example, like one of my favorite models in my cities range is my Frostheart Phoenix, which is being ridden by Tizara, the Ice Queen as Kislev. I've got a whole bunch of nods to the old world, but even outside of the old world, like my Stormcast, I've kit bashed them even back in first edition Age of Sigmar. First edition Age of Sigmar, when I was allying in Stormcast to my cities or my free guild, I would convert all of their heads to be Space Wolves. I'd find the non-technology Space Wolf heads without like any of the gadgets on their face. But I made them like they were trying to be like from Gur. Because you hear stories that Stormcast who stay in Gur for too long start to take on like bestial characteristics. And again, like I think I'm a unique butterfly, or I like to think that. So like when I go to a tournament, I don't want a stock standard army, and I like to put myself a little bit, whether it's my ice gargants, it is my corrupted Slaneshi type daughters of Cain, whether it is my cities of Sigma, where I've got like halflings as my KO from Tempest Die, and I've converted like my gun haulers out of steam tanks, and I've done all these crazy things. Conversion has led me to do hobby, and it is one of the things that motivates me to complete an army.
Yeah, and it's like, and if that's not who you are, that's also perfectly like good, right? Because I got a buddy Mason. It's like the way he sees the game is different than I. He's like he'd be fine if we would just play with plastic models because there's just game pieces, and he has to paint them, right? But seeing him get better and better and enjoying painting, like, oh, I get to now. But before it's like, yeah, this piece moves this far. This is the knight goes up 3 and over 1. It's like, and there's like whatever is good for you, it's good.
Yeah, you don't have to do it. And this is just the way I do it.
Yeah.
Because often I'll be reading a story or a snippet of lore. I'll listen to 2 Plus Tough, or I'll listen to an audio book, and I get this idea. Like a perfect example is there's a nightly Nurgle force called the Lord of the Flies? No, the Plague Knights. I can't think of their name off the top of my head, but there's like this nightly Nurgle army in one of the books that I was reading, Plague Garden. And it's like, man, I would love this as an army. And you get this inspiration of like, what would my Blightkins look like if they were like a regal, chivalrous Nurgle Knights? And it leads you down a path, and it gets you exploring kits, and gets you, whether it's paint schemes and telling your story through paint or whatever. Like, you don't have to be conversions. It could be just a paint, and you could be painting a certain color because it means something to you. As you mentioned, your Seahawk crossbowman.
Yeah, it's just like in that kind of like, oh, this will be cool. And now it's like you're known for that. Like, yeah, it's like, I like the Seahawks, but in seeing that inspire other people, like it's a conversation starter. Like I have like, football fans from like San Francisco 49ers, our rival, right? They'll come up to me and like, oh, they'll start friendly talking trash. And it's just like super like, and that's what you're known for. Or like, and I've seen people like send me photos like, hey, I like, this is my favorite team and I painted it up like this. And I was like, that is so cool. It's like finding that inspiration and going with it.
I love it. I love it. And I've seen so many cool people, like whether it is people bringing like one of my GTs last year, somebody converted up their army to be like World of Warcraft, a particular faction in the World of Warcraft. I've seen people do like, they bring themselves, their favorite movies, their sports. One of the guys, Shaun, at CanCon this year, converted up his Ironjawz army to be like a rock metal band. Like, that's just sick.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Like, bring yourself to the army. But on the topic of talking conversions, the Spider King PJ, shout out to the Mortal Realms podcast, asking, is one cool model enough to start an army, or does it have to be more than that?
For me, I would say it has to be more than just one cool, depending how bad. Like, so, and models can grow on you. Like I got Techless for a Grand Alliance army, which like no longer exists, but like I was working on some sort of AoE, I had Croak, I had Techless, and it was like, like realizing, not listening, because if you like something and you hear a lot of chatter, because there was a lot of negativity about that model, and then once I like had Noah, my commission buy, shout out to him, painted it up how I wanted it, and I was like, I fell in love with the model, and that was like an accidental army, and all of a sudden, well, I have 800 points worth of Lumineth, I might as well get a couple more things and I have a Lumineth army, and then it's like, falling in love with something where I was like, I didn't even, when I looked at it originally, no, but like it is like, again, it can be, but I would prefer the whole range speak to me rather than just like, well, here's one thing, like Flesh Eater Courts. You got that Arch Regent, which is new. You got the Ghoul King sitting on the throne, that's new. But I painted up some ghouls, and I was like, you can tell these models are really dated, and so that would probably stop me from going after that more.
For me, it depends. Like, I think you fall in love with armies, especially like as you paint them, and that's probably why I say paint your battle line before you paint your heroes, because you build your skill and you get familiar with the model and the contours and what works for you. For me though, like what draws me is ultimately the monster heroes, like the Marathis, the Alariels, the Nagashas, the Archaons, the Mega Gargants. So if you've got one of those, that's enough for me to start an army, or at least to invest into that army. And whether I buy Archaon or not, I don't know. And I have not bought Nagash, even though I have a pretty deep death army. The fact that I've got that as an option is enough for me. I really like those models, and it kind of actually, like when I looked at the new 40k, and like you can have one, is it Epic Lord or Mighty Lord or whatever it is, like a Primarch. I'm like, that's my type of army. If I had like a Primarch for every army or equivalent of like a God model, I'm sold. But I'm a Timmy. I'm a massive Timmy. I'm a sucker for that. Damo asking, does your first army design ever pan out as a winner? Does it, or do they morph over time, or have you ever picked your first list based on a first impression and it's become the list to beat? So I guess like we're connecting our concept to reality and performance here.
Yeah. It's like one of those for competitive play. Depends on your area. Once for me, it did. It happened to twice. Like I said, the first tournament I went to, this is like, in these days are kind of, fewer and fewer because how popular the game is now. And just, it's like, there are shows like this, and where there wasn't really like that when I first got in the hobby. And so I just showed up with a shoot cast list and, just won the tournament. And I was winning every few tournaments up here. And then, and so, then the meta changes and stuff. And like I just mentioned, the Lumineth, I was playing the first edition book, right? And then I kind of was like, okay, Sentinels are good. And then the second book came out, and it was the first time, because I like to overachieve with maybe like a lower A tier, B tier army, and just try to box with God like that. Then I was playing the best army with a really good list in my skill level. And I was like, oh, this is what it feels like. And I'm a sore winner. And so I was just swaggering through, shooting people with my 50 Sentinels. It was a lot of fun. I miss old Lumina.
I don't know. I don't know if I ever, like, I have a concept and I build something based on, and I'm willing to try different things. In third edition, when I picked up Daughters of Cain, I decided to try the Frostheart Phoenix build, and it's starting to become popular now. But I piloted that 12 to 18 months ago. Actually, maybe even before that, maybe at the back end of second edition. So I'm always someone, I talk to you about being special and unique and being a butterfly. I like to try different things, and whether it is bringing in a particular unit that is not popular, or I like to try to find ways to make it work. Maybe for me, Damo, the thing was, when Sons of Behemat very first came out, I picked them up as a faction. I saw them announced, I think it was at LVO or Adepticon or maybe even a Warhammer Fest, and I knew this was the army for me. And when all the Battletome previews came out at the time, I wasn't getting Battletomes from Games Workshop then. A lot of people said this is the worst Battletome ever. Like literally, it was poo-pooed. And I took them to a decent size event, and I went 4-1. And since then I've done pretty well with Sons, where they're strong or where they're not strong. So just because someone says that it's good or bad doesn't necessarily make it true. So I guess that'd be my response to there. Like sometimes it's about the list, but often it's about how you pilot it. So I don't put as much weight on lists. It's all about how you think about the micro decisions within a list. And so, and you'll be surprised how many good players take off meta lists and make them do really well.
True. That's true.
What level of importance do you place? Pumpkin Hill asking, what level of importance do you place on the try before you buy? So things like using Tabletop Simulator as an example, using empty bases to proxy, other ways of because, like you mentioned earlier, you tried a couple of armies after Khorne and some of them just weren't for you. Like, and that could be wasted thousands of dollars.
This is something I'm learning to do more. Because I used to, there's a reason why I was playing Tempest Die, and all of a sudden I had 2,000 points of KO. because it was like, ooh, I want to run 9 engine riggers. No. I want to run this. No. I want to run this. And this is all theory hammer in my head. I'm not even doing it on the table. And I could have saved thousands of dollars by doing that. And like I used to be anti TTS, where now I see it as a useful tool because it removes, like I was talking about earlier, removes what I like, which is the human interaction I have, and where I'm like, oh, this is just the game. The game that is, has its flaws and its quirks, and it's better than it's ever been, but it's just the game. And then, but it does save you some cash. So I put more importance on it than I used to. Like, and if, as long as you can find an opponent, if you don't want to, if you're not computer savvy, because there it is, like there's a little bit of a learning curve, especially for me. I'm not technology savvy. I'm surprised I got this to work. And so when you have an opponent, like, can I try these out? I just want to proxy these as these, and most people are cool, just like, yeah, go for it. And so it definitely try before you buy is a very, very important.
Yeah, and people who are in my Discord know that we've got hundreds of games happening. Through maybe not hundreds, but lots of games happening. So you can drop in and watch one. You can set one up. It's a great tool. I'd highly recommend it if you want to test something, especially like if it's an expensive idea. Back in the day, like practicing with empty bases or proxying, like, hey Jack, can we play a game? But this is going to represent this model. Are you cool if I try something out? And casually and at the local store, proxying and playing around with something. Especially, you don't want to buy a model, spend the time building it, spend the time painting it, and then your concept doesn't work for whatever reason. So
got off long strikes.
yeah, like exactly right. You're like, well,
I'm sorry, Miguel.
so absolutely, trying before you're buying, I think is definitely a great idea. Or if you've got a friend and you got a good community, you're like, hey Jack, I know you got that KO army. Do you mind if we swap armies for the day? Like, do you mind if you bring your KO? I'd love to just play around with it. And if you've got the trust, I'm sure plenty of people would lend you their army to try.
There is like if you can find just a good, even like gaming clubs or something like that. Like I still have my buddy Matt's Zinch sitting on my kitchen table. I need to get back that I borrowed from LVO, but he's just like, he's like, oh man, when I see you, just bring it through. But it's like when you have like the friendships and stuff that this hobby can, like, you're just like, yeah, you try it out, or here, try this, borrow this, see how you like it before you invest money into it.
Well, I was thinking about my Frost Phoenix. My mate Liam came over for a tournament. It's like, hey, I want to run Daughters of Cain with the Phoenix. I know you've got it. Can I borrow yours? I'm like, yeah, sure, no problem. Just bring it back. So absolutely try before you buy if you're unfamiliar, or even use things like Tabletop Simulator or Discord or regular communities to test your idea. Like, hey, I've got this idea where I want to do lots of shooting in whatever. Will this work?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's a lot of like good minds on this game. That's one of the things. Like I trust people. It's like there are people who think about this a lot more than I do, and so the code has been cracked out there. I'm not discovering America. There's people already living here. It's like, and so there's so you have to find some trusted names out there. What do you think of this? And like hopefully you find somebody who I keep bringing up Mason. He can let you down gently. When you bring him an idea, this is great. He's like, okay, I see what you're trying to do there. But, have you thought about this? Maybe this unit is more optimal. Because you say you're playing cities, for instance, you're like, ooh, I got all these Wildwood Rangers. You're like, yeah, I see that you have the Wildwood Rangers, but have you seen this same unit over here that does the same thing? It's cheaper and it does mortal wounds. Hey, take a look at that. Like, but I have 30 Wildwood Rangers though. What do I do with these?
But I will say that if you have an idea, look, some people don't have that type of grace, and you'll put your list up and you're like, hey, what do you think of my list? Like, this doesn't work. And the best intentions here is people want you to succeed. So don't take that personally. They just want you to do that well. But I also find as well, if you have this idea where you're like, here's my example. When I started my Daughters of Cain, I wanted my corrupted Slaneshi type cult of pleasure, which was a story that goes back to fantasy battles. And the Cult of Slaanesh, which is a Morathi / Slaanesh demon force, I wanted witch elves to be the witch elves. I wanted them to be witch elves, and my army was based around witch elves at a time of Galatian veterans. And a lot of people were like, "Oh, don't do that. It's about snakes, 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 snakes." Like, that's not the concept. That's not the idea that I have. And yes, I recognize its flaws, but I'm going to make the best. And I think being upfront with, like, I really want to build my army around this particular model. Give me some advice. Accepting the limitations.
So in realizing if you're going to the internet for that, you're going to get the bluntness of the internet, and it's like, all right, if I, so, putting your thoughts out there, you're going to trial by fire. They're going to, test it and see, but you're like, yeah, I know running 90 Sisters of Slaughter isn't good, but if I'm taking Kraith, I know me, I'm just going to roll all 4-ups. That's how I am in my head. I'm like, of course, I'm going to roll. Every time I roll is going to be 4-up. So basically, I'm fighting twice with every unit. It's going to be a foolproof.
Shout out Chuck Moore. We know you're at with Kraith #1 fan. Pumpkin Hill asking, is there an army that you weren't 100% on board on, and then you've gotten it in your hand and you fell in love with?
Stormcast Lumineth. Both those, like, were accidental armies, and like I can equate it because I was winning with them, but just like, oh, these, that probably helped. That probably helped a lot. But yeah, it was I just like, hey, or even like Daughters of Cain and the Kraith, right? I never saw me being a Daughters of Cain player, but I'm like, I kind of like, fell in love with the concept. And like, if you look at my, like, I have I need to finish painting it, but see, got her converted. So a little female Cain statue with a whip, because it's all Sisters of Slaughter. So this is for the that army. And so kind of like I fell in love with that, like the concept of like, and so everything is a Sister of Slaughter. Like my Hag Queen, she has Sister of Slaughter mask just all throughout the army. So
love it. Mine would probably be Stormcast. And while I still really dislike Stormcast for the first like 6 years of Age of Sigmar, the new Thunderstrike armor really caught me, because all of a sudden they became the vision that I had. I hated the chunky Space Marine kind of style of Stormcast, but I know that some people really love that aesthetic. But as soon as they went to that slendery type army that reminded me more of, like, I don't know, Dungeons and Dragons, plate mail, or, and even just painting Stormcast not always gold, that really opened my eyes up to the faction too. So for me, that was kind of where that's what really worked for me. Maybe then the other side, Jack, is there an army that you loved that you've actually been turned off with because it's actually not as good, or you didn't like painting it?
Slaanesh, that was what I came in, like, wait till they got the book and I played it. I was like, I don't like, especially that Slaanesh. I want to try the new Slaanesh. This new book is really interesting to me with the new depravity and the temptation dice and all that stuff. But that first Slaanesh book, where I was like, oh, this is too good. People aren't, like Vince had the whole Shelf Slaanesh kind of campaign going on. And I was like, I was really excited for it. Love the keeper models. I got Shalaxi, 2 beautifully painted keepers, and they're just sitting. They've been sitting kind of for, and so that was an army like, I'm ready for this. Never mind.
I think for me, Seraphon was the one. I love the idea of painting dinosaurs, but I was so underwhelmed with the Stegodons. Like, when you look at the size of a Stegodon and then you realize how small it is, I felt underwhelmed, and I'm like, I lost interest. If it was bigger, if it was like the dinosaurs that I imagine, not that I need them like the size of a Carnosaur or something ridiculous, but like they're a legacy from an olden world that I think if you had your time again and you redesign the Stegodon, it's bigger. The Bastiladon is bigger. And you look at the new Seraphon right now, and I did sell my old Seraphon, but the new range is like, ooh, I could potentially start you. I love you at these little Velociraptor type things.
Yeah.
So
okay.
that for me. Duckfish asking, how do you keep interested in army? I find halfway through, I just stop liking an army.
Like one of those problems I don't really have, but I think if you do have that problem, maybe smaller games might be for you, or because by the time maybe you're burned out by the time you paint 2,000 points, or a war cry and things like that. Whereas like I just have a huge rotation, so if I am getting tired of something, I'm like, all right, boom, next army, next army, next army, and that's like the privilege, if I dare say that word, I have doing the YouTube channel. Like I rotate stuff, or having a good like hobby community. I'm like the club I'm part of is Victoria's Secret, great group of individuals, and like it's like, hey, can I try your gargants? It seems fun. I'd like to give that a shot. Like, oh sure.
I think for me, what I never lose interest. I rarely lose interest in an army, but I often get distracted by other shiny things. I'm like a magpie. I'm like someone who's like sees something, and it's bad for me because I'm talking to all these really passionate people. But I told you about my Slaanesh Slaves to Darkness army that I'm working on. And Seraphon's coming, and that's really attractive and exciting. I love Slaanesh, and I'd love to start a Slaanesh army, like a proper Hedonites of Slaanesh. Cities of Sigmar's coming down the line, and there's a risk that I'm going to go jump back into cities. So for me, it's about completing what I've started and progressing with it, and not always chasing the shiny thing, because eventually I'll get to the end of the year and I've achieved nothing because I keep chasing my tail and I have all these half-finished projects, and I'll get sad. Because I've got a really strong idea and excitement for my slaves, it's carrying me forward. And I think even if Cities of Sigmar comes out with a whole bunch of new models, that could be a future project. I don't have to touch that now, and I'm confident that I'll continue what I've started. But if I just picked it up thickly, like I did with Seraphon, I'll lose interest like my old models. I'm like, I'm not really tied to this.
Yeah, definitely this Settlers Gain army that I've been working on, that really restoked my fire, because I'm like, ooh, I came up with this, and I'm presenting it to people, and it's all order, so it still looks like, because I paint all my order stuff Seahawks. So I was like, hey, it almost is a throwback to the old Grand Alliance thing, because I'm allying in some Namardi and Reavers and the Soul Scryer, and I have some like, oh, this is 3 different unique armies in one, and it's just I'm a big fan of it.
Johnny Ethereal Vampire asking, when you pick an army, like a second army, do you look for play style at all, or are you like how do you look at like the play style? Like, are you thinking about like shooting and strengths and speed and magic, or?
Personally, no. Well, just it's like a lot, especially like when I'm working with people for rerolling ones. Sometimes there's people like, "Oh, can I play that one?" And you're like, "Yeah, sure." And it's like a lot of it's like, what do you have? Like, so Khorne and Slaanesh, 2 armies ahead, right? And so it can be overwhelming that way. Like for me personally, like, oh, I got to work on both these. And sometimes like you realize, oh, I get to work on these instead of I have to. Trying to find that joy and balance into it. But yeah, like the rule set, I enjoy shooting like for competitively, because it's like, oh, you mean I get to do damage to you and nothing happens to me? This seems like great. And so I definitely have a play style, stick and move, speed in shooting, where I have success with in competitive play.
I often find I pick armies because I want to do something different. So I'm not trying to find the same play style again and again and again. I have things that I really like in an army, but when I went from cities to Gits to Stormcast to Daughters to Legions of Nagash / Soulblight, they're all very different. So for me, it's about learning a style. It's about getting a better understanding of the game and looking at things a little bit differently. So I'm actually okay with it. Like, I actually look at things, but I'm purposely looking for, like, now that I have like a Horde Gits army, I don't need another Horde army. So when I go choosing my next army, that's why Gits and Sons for me is so good, because if I need a rest from the Horde, I have this ultra elite Sons army. If I want something that's really high armored, I've got my Stormcast. So I've got these different. And if I want lots and lots of shooting, like volume, I've got my cities. Like, I've got different places.
Yeah, and we're reiterating like this is not like, some people just have the one, and it's like, but like maybe there are armies where they have different play styles inside that army. Like Stormcast is like a jack of all trades, master of some, and it's like you can, like, or even Gits. There's so many different ways to play gets where, okay, I want Trog, so I want my big heavies running through smashing. Oh, I want my like squig herd because I don't want people to have fun when they play me. Or you have your hoppers because you also don't want people to have fun when they play me. There's all the kind of stuff. Yeah. So
All right, Mimi asking, do you ever go back to an army later and redo things that you already did, like your painting? Because this is the challenge, right? Like as you build up your skill over an army, you learn the tricks, and you're like, oh, I wish I painted this differently, or I've now learned a scheme that works better for my army than what I did at the start. Do you ever go back?
do I repaint? No. Does stuff like I changed my Stormcast Seahawk recipe. I they came out with the like I think it's like night something. One of the paints is a darker blue that I really like, and like I start with that now. But like when you look at it, you can't tell. It's just lots of blue and green. But I know like my recipe has changed over time. But I'm not repainting anything. If it's painted, it's painted. I'm not. I don't need more of that. But yeah, I have changed my recipes, but I'm not repainting stuff.
I'll rarely repaint, but I also won't. I'll buy a test unit. I will paint one model and practice with it and test that. And if I need to scrub that model because I'm not happy with the scheme, I will do that. But I'll rarely go back and repaint something I've already painted. So I'd rather, and that's kind of why I say paint your battle line before your heroes, because I don't want to paint like as attractive as it will be to start up on a Lariel at the start. I will learn so much about painting Sylvaneth that, you know what, I wish I'll be buying another Alariel because I want to do a better job.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. I'm going to use that. paint your heroes last. So you mastered that technique, and
even if
sometimes
you
have to reward yourself with a hero painting.
Oh, 100%. Like paint up that unit of dryads, then treat yourself with a little minor hero, but don't go to the big ones that you can do a better job towards the end because you've understood the army.
This is off topic real quick. We'll get back to it. When I realized, because I was intimidated to paint big models, and I was like, oh, this is, and then realized it can actually be easier to paint like a bloodthirster than it's like, oh, this is, the techniques are different. And it's like, oh, it can be intimidating. Painting bigger models is, it's like there's that fear. Oh no, but it's like, oh, this is easy.
It's the fear though that people, I think that's a fear of people ruining it. Like, you spend 200, 300, whatever it might be in your currency. I don't want to quote unquote ruin my Marathi. So there's that intimidation factor, but you're right. Like it's just plastic. Like you can always strip it. It's not a bad thing. I am conscious of time, by the way. That's why I'm being a bit rapid fiery here. I'm sure Jack has a hot date that he hasn't told us about just yet, like last time. Couple.
She's a 6. She's a 6.
She can come on the stream later. Couple more. One from Broken Chef. How much of an army planning goes into looks? So not just your color choices, but positioning of models, kit bashing, conversions. Does that come into play for you?
I love the kit bash. It's like it is a skill. It's fun. Like especially like if you have one unit of so bloodletters, right? The basic stock bloodletters. I'm like, I have so many bits from Skull Reapers or Wrathmongers. So I'm like, I'm doing weapon swaps all throughout, right? And so it is because it like where you mentioned Snowflake. This is the only unit that looks exactly like this on Earth. I always think of that. Okay, this is so cool, and so it is a factor in it. Is it like, do I have an army like my Lumineth is stock standard? It's just a paint job that makes it unique. Whereas like I do love a little bit of kit bash.
Yeah, I'm a massive fan. My Stormcast were kit bashed. My Daughters of Cain are kit bashed. My sons are all kit bashed. I love having one of my Gatebreakers with a Stormcast shield that is the Diaz endless spell, and there's so many kit bashes in that army. And one of the things that I'm currently doing with my Slaves to Darkness and what's holding me from painting it is I'm exploring some different alternative parts. So I've got like some of the Myrmidon heads. I'm trialing different shields. I'm trialing some different Slaanesh things. Like, how do I tell the story that this is a Slaves to Darkness Slaanesh army? Yeah, I could paint them pinks and purples, but are there other little accessories or things that I can do to tell that story? So that's what I'm currently exploring, but it doesn't have to be. You could tell a story just through paint. But for me, I thoroughly enjoy kit bashing, repositioning, like cutting off arms and repositioning them, and that brings me joy. Maybe a couple more questions. Mecha Phaser asking, does 3D printing affect your decision to start an army? I always think there's something to talk about when it comes to 3D printed models in Age of Sigmar.
So this is like a personal thing, because and it's like not to, okay, yeah, this is just kind of like, I'm not judging anybody else who does. Like, this is my thoughts on it. When I was a young man, in the late 90s, early 2000s, like Napster was a thing. And like, and I would like get on torrents and get movies and stuff like that. And then as I got older, and like because I could afford it and stuff like that. And it does smack a little to me of piracy, because where I'm playing this game put out by this company and they make models for this thing. And so I myself will support the company by like using their models or purchasing the stuff, right? And so, I don't, obviously if I get secondary market, but I use the models because it's like, I've played people like, hey, what is this? Because I know what everything is visually. And so, and if it's a whole, okay, this is this, it's like, you're proxying, you're basically proxying stuff. But for me, I don't, but also, I have friends who do, they have 3D printers. They're like, do you need anything? Like, no, I don't, but knock yourself out. You pirate. No, but that's my view on it. So I don't, but it is very useful, especially it's like, I'd rather people play the game. And if you can afford doing it this way, I want people playing the game, and so.
I feel less about the piracy piece, just my own personal standards. I think to probably separate a few pieces here, I despise playing 3D printed armies where I have the same Mega Gargant that was printed off one STL file, and you to try to tell me that one's King Broad, one is a Gatebreaker, and two's War Stomper when they look exactly the same. Put that to the side. I think being able to print off alternative models. So for example, like I was talking to some people the other day about the Cockatrice. I love the Cockatrice. I just hate the GW sculpt. So you know what? If there is a great alternative print that still tells a story of a Cockatrice, or maybe it's something that's a bit more thematical to you, like a Slaanesh Cockatrice. For example, I bought a limited edition model from Creature Caster, which was an Australian version of the like a Hydra, because I wanted in Cities of Sigmar, I wanted a Hydra, and maybe Doors of Cain it was a Hydra, but so it was Australians.
Like Australian Hydra is like all dingo heads on it or something.
One was a koala, one was a kangaroo. Really cool. It was hilarious, right? But it was something to tell a story, and it was fun. Would I necessarily personally print off a whole army? No. But at the same time, it depends. Like if someone printed off an amazing, for example, there is a couple of cool companies that do a full range of Seraphon. I could be tempted because of, like there's some really good kits. If I was
sorry, I was just saying for older, like, I've seen some like Flesh Eater Court stuff that's gorgeous. I'm like, oh, because these models are older, but and I get that, but it's like one of those things, like not judging people do it. This is just my personal, how I feel about it. Like, oh, I'll just, and plus I'm terrible at technology. And so I would probably burn down my house trying to 3D print something.
I mean, you can get them printed from somewhere else.
I can barely use the air fryer.
At the same time, Jack, like Scryer Acolytes, for example, in Australia are $20 a model. So if I want to run a unit of Acolytes, that's $200 or more for a unit that will die to a stiff breeze.
And now, like for models that were like came out when Bill Clinton was the president of the United States. And it's just like,
so if there's a way for me to get like, a newer sculpt gutter runners, a new run thing of, or maybe something that's a bit more Slaanesh-y or corny than what my current kit is, or maybe I want to do Nurgle Slaves to Darkness, but I want to have like tentacles and things. I think there's a great way to tell a story. I'm more likely to use 3D printed parts and bits, but certainly I have not started an army based on 3D printing. But who knows what the world will look like in the future? So it's up to you. You do you.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's like I don't want that to be every single answer. Like, do what you want to do. But this is me. You asking my question, my opinion, I'm giving it to you.
I think it just depends on the range. Like some ranges are really supported, and it just depends. But as an opponent, I think you and I both agree that when you come to the table and you tell me this is a certain model, it should represent what it's trying to represent. Like, don't try to convince me one thing is something very different to this. Like, it's not my job.
I'm not going to not play. This is just like, okay, it's easier for me if like, it's like, boom, know what that does, know what that does. Okay, what's this? What's this? Okay.
Is there any other contributing factors when it comes to you buying an army, whether it's the time, the cost? We obviously just talked about 3D printing. Like for me, Skaven, for example, is an army I wouldn't touch because the range is old and I don't like the 3D printing would just be an extra step in the process. But is there any other contributing factors for you other than obviously like the lore and the models and stuff?
I think like the age of the range, we're just talking about like if I was like, okay, I bet this is due for something. Like, like, well, okay. Oh, there have been surprises. Like, this didn't get a refresh. Like only got one new hero. But then it's like, so I'm like, okay, I probably wouldn't start playing that. So yeah, it's probably just like, and it has to like, I have to want to play it, the desire to play that sort of army.
I think for me, it's the time, right? Like how long does it take for me to get this on the tabletop? Because that influences the list. It depends on the units that I buy. If I was to start an army today, which is the 1st of April, by the time I get this army painted up ready for a GT, it's very likely the next General's Handbook. So for me, I can't be too focused on Galatian champions and the current meta. I'm building up something with a long-term kind of focus. So I'm never trying to chase the hotness. Like I'm not going to buy all the Chosen and all of the Knights at the moment. I'm not going to be Nurgle marking everything because I want the banner. It's about the idea and the vision and building up the foundation, I guess, of what I want. And then when it comes to being tournament ready, I'll tweak, I'll buy an extra unit, I'll modify depending on the current General's Handbook. Have you ever started an army based off like receiving some models from like a prize pool? Like have you ever like gone to a GT, won a box of, I don't know, something and gone, you know what, I'm going to build an army off this? I haven't. I've never started an army that way. Often I'll give the prize away. I'm like, oh, I've already got too many models. I don't need more.
Who asked that question?
That was Madigan, the
Madigan
Mortark of Rules.
Madigan was give him credit. No, I've never had that happen. But it's a great way. But obviously, it's like you have to be playing the game already. But it's like as far as like raffles and stuff, get it as But personally, no, never had that happen.
Sometimes I might receive a model where I'm like, oh, I could possibly use this in a project, but it's very rare that I'll start an army.
I've been given armies. Like it's like, oh, here, have the Ideneth army fully painted. It's like, oh, I guess I'm an Ideneth player. Hey, look at me. High tide.
Last question, and then we'll wrap it up, is Tweak Synth asking. Hey, what?
There was a question in there where it asked all the armies you had, and I went through and tallied.
Where was that? Which one? All right, well, let's use that at the very end. Let's do the very end. That can be our final question.
Okay.
Tweak Synth asking. I'm also conscious of time because you were very adamant of this being this a 1 hour show, and currently it's 1 hour.
Working out the kinks,
38 minutes.
Working out the kinks. Here we go,
mate. It's 3 o'clock Australia time. I'm good. I can keep talking. All right. So Tweak Synth asking, and I think this is a really good question as well, is how much do you consider mechanics when it comes to starting an army? Like, do you build that 2K list? Are you building what you want and just painting it up respectfully? Or are you in the weeds when it comes to the mechanics of the army?
I'm a completionist. So if I get an army, like I'm getting everything. which Cities of Sigmar was. Sometimes it's a sandbox. Cities of Sigmar was quicksand for me. I was like, it's too much. I don't need 30 Wildwood Rangers. I need another 2,000 points of KO because I'm addicted personality, right? But being like, so the rules are second. I think like model is first. Like, do I need this for my YouTube channel? That plays a factor. And so it's like, so it's not, the rules aren't high on the thing. Like, because especially for competitive play, like I think more about it, but most of my games aren't tournament play. Most of it is just casual or, club days and stuff like that.
Rules play a part for me. I will absolutely look at rules, and some things will inspire me to progress a concept. Like, for example, like I'll go to Daughters of Cain, the Cauldron of Blood. I love the Cauldron of Blood. I look at the rules and I look at the buffs that it gives an army, and I look at the model and I love the model. So I'm like, right, I love this Cauldron of Blood. Win, lose, or draw, I want to run the Cauldron of Blood, and I'm going to build an army around a Cauldron of Blood. Who benefits from the Cauldron of Blood? Now, it might not necessarily be the 2K version of that army, but I'm like, what are the synergies and the combinations, and what are the models that I really like that would work well? If you were to say to me that only snakes, like your combat snakes, work really well, your blood sisters and your blood stalkers work with the Cauldron, I'd go, a pass. I don't really want an army of blood sisters and blood stalkers.
I think the way you just explained it, that has like my Kraith army is based off a rule. On a 4-up, I get to fight you again, and I expanded that out in 2,000 points. And just, I love the little tech. I can run and just pile into you. I control the combats. I retreat, pile right back into. And so the rules have affected the way if I'm going to build an army. Yeah, because it's one little rule on the 4-up.
Back in the day before like 3rd edition, I was running a Gitz army that would give you up to -4 to hit. I'm like, lol, Netters, lol, Geminids, lol, the Troll Hag Curse, lol, another spell in my army. And I build around this concept. And it was fun. Yeah, like Itchy Nuisance. But like, but like, if you said to me, Anthony, this is the combination you've got to run, and I'd be like, I don't like the models, I wouldn't always run that. Just because it's gamey doesn't mean I'm drawn to it. It has to be this concoction of models that I like and rules that I think are cool.
Mm-hmm.
All right. The last question that you wanted to bring back to the table. Yeah. What is it? Who asked it and what was it?
It was one of the questions.
Was it Mimi's question?
Yeah. It was like the armies you had. I even went back to fantasy and I tabulated all the armies I had. Right. Starting with.
So Mimi asked, how many armies have you owned through your career as a player? So that's the question. That's how we bring it home.
All right, starting enough. High Elf, first one. That was the, I think, 3rd edition, or no, 4th edition box for fantasy. Orcs and Goblins, Beastmen, and then what was it? Was it Warriors of Chaos or it wasn't Slaves of Darkness?
No, Warriors of Chaos. Because back in the day, demons were combined. The Demons of Chaos, you had Warriors of Chaos. Yeah, but before that, it actually was Slaves to Darkness when you go back to the original book.
Okay. This was like, I played a Slanesh. That's where I had all my 1DS stuff I was playing. And then 15 years, then Stormcast, Khorne. That's one
of the originals.
Yep. We got Stormcast, Khorne, Sons of Behemoth, Karajan Overlords, Cities of Sigmar, Gloomspite Gitz, Bone Splitters, Iron Jaws. I don't know if they count as one now, but Daughters of Cain, Flesh Eater Courts, Slanesh, Fire Slayers, Lumineth, Deepkin, Slaves of Darkness, Beasts of Chaos, Ogremont Tribes are all 2,000 points or more of stuff I owned.
How many? What percentage do you still have them? Like, do you still have most of them? Some of them?
Let's see. I actually still have my High Elves and Beastmen and Orcs and Goblins from back in the day. My mom was a hoarder. She kept all that stuff. So still have my just get stuff I got rid of. I got rid of a lot of my KO. So I don't think I have 2,000 points anymore. Bone Splitters and Iron Jaws. Got rid of those. Got rid of my Flesh Eater Courts, my Fire Slayers, my Beast of Chaos, and my Ogremont Tribe. So I actually did get rid of there was a culling when I said I moved in. I looked at all this stuff, and there was a lot of stuff that we had doubles of. Like, if doing the channel stuff, like we don't need 2 of these.
All
What
right.
about you?
So, good question. All right. So I have the Empire, which is now Cities of Sigmar, but the olden days. I have a Zinch Demon Army. I have Imperial Guard and Sisters of Battle Army,
40K.
as well as Space Wolves. We're getting technical here. The armies that I. Yeah, so Imperial Guard, Sisters of Battle, and Space Wolves were my three 40k armies. So what have I also got? I've got Cities of Sigmar, as I previously mentioned, Stormcast, Daughters of Cain, Gloomspite Gits. I had Seraphon that I sold, Flesh Eater Courts, Legions of Agash, aka Soulblight Gravelords. Currently Slaves to Darkness. I think that's mostly, but for me, I usually go deep as opposed to going wide. Like I've got easily 20,000 points of Cities of Sigmar. I've got like eight mega gargants. Like I've got like almost like 2 or 3 of varieties. Like I go deep rather than going wide. Rarely does an army. I've got so many. I think I've got like 2 IKEA shelves that have like double shelves. So I've got like 8 shelves. Like I'm stacked with cities. Stormcast, like you name it. So yeah, I usually go deep as opposed to going wide. But yeah, it's all my armies. I'm sure there's like one I've forgotten about.
Yeah, I like yours. Just the swag you got. You got like a Nagash sword over there. You got Gal Miraz. You got over there.
Yeah. I know what I got. I know what I got. Oh my God. I'm gonna hang it up on the wall eventually. But... Jack, what's coming up on the channel? Is there anything coming up on re-rolling ones that we should be keeping an eye out that we're allowed to talk about?
No, that I'm allowed to talk about. No. But there's some cool stuff. Like, Brent and Shoe coming back for Battle Report. That's hey, old school fans. And yeah, so there's some cool changes, like again, the move. But yeah. Appreciate everybody who's stuck with us since day one, who's come, who's left. Hey man, this community is great. And it's great. I love meeting people in person. So there's a US Open coming here in my local place in July. Hit me up. You can crash with me. Crash at my place. Hey. And don't be weird about it. But yeah, so thank you, Coach. This has been a lot of fun. And the next time we record, hopefully we'll be live. We can do the simulcast thing you were telling me about. And then yeah.
How are you?
You have anything going on?
Computer's gone pretty well so far, so hopefully we'll be back live very soon. There's had some tech issues, but for me, I'll have a couple of GTs up I have a GT or 2 up my sleeve next month. I have a Slaanesh show tomorrow, which I'm really excited to talk about, Heed Knights of Slaanesh, and maybe there's some stuff coming in the near future. Who knows? Something deathly. But Jack, this has been great. Glad we've gotten to 2 episodes on the finest hour. Probably still working on our hour. Maybe we'll need to like put an S at the front.
No, see, we wanted him to say the finest hour, OUR, and he put the H in there. It was, these guys, hard to find good help. Shout out to
Jack.
Comic Rat. Yeah, artist.
See you all next time. If you've enjoyed this, and if there's a topic, by the way, that you want to hear from us, we want an opinion, maybe you have a thought, leave it in the comment section. Go check out Rerolling Ones if you haven't already subscribed there. There's a little thing that Jack doesn't know about, that we are both approaching 20,000 subscribers very soon. I have a personal little goal trying to beat him. So he's currently at 19,500. I'm at like just about to crack 19,000. So let's see who can get to 20,000 first.
Oh, for sure. Let's do it. I'm going to pay for mine. All right. All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Coach.
Hope you enjoyed the discussion.
All right. Later, my friend.
All right, mate. Thanks for hanging around until the end. I hope you enjoyed that video and you walked away with a few new ideas. Now, if you did, I would love it if you pressed like on the video, as well as left me a comment with your thoughts. The conversation will continue over on Discord, and the link is down below in the episode description. I also want to give a massive shout out to the AoS Coach patrons and YouTube members who are supporting the channel and the growth that you're seeing here. So cheers, you are all bloody legends. And until next time, don't roll a 1-1 on a spellcast.